All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the show. This is Tuesday, April the 25th, 2017. Thank you very much here for being with us for another broadcast. We'll be getting into quite a few different items of discussion here for you on the show tonight, so strap in, get ready, and we'll be getting into all sorts of things here on the show as we normally do. So, again, thanks so much for being here. TheGlobalReality.com is my website where this broadcast originates from. And that's where you can find all the ways to support our work and to get the documentary films, the newest of which is The Spellcasters and The Spellcasters 1.5, which was released last week. I really wish we'd get more people to get downloads, get copies of this. It really has up-to-the-minute information that... it really ties all the stuff in Volume 1 together so much more, especially the stuff with, with Farrakhan and Jim Mars and just the whole, for years, I know many people have seen these, it just explains so much because there's all these people, that have had obvious connections to Scientology, but we've never been able to, actually pin them down. And the discovery of the information about the free zone since the release of Volume 1 is really key information. There's lots of stuff in there. Somebody mentioned, one of our listeners mentioned that, there's an email or YouTube comment or something, but somebody mentioned recently that what they like about my films is that they have replay value. And that's, I build that in. It's that way, by design so that you can go back and always find stuff. And sometimes, stuff is in there that you have to kind of find on your own. Sometimes I'll point things out and say, did you notice that? But sometimes I don't point things out. And there's some things in there in that Spellcasters 1.5 that's out now. It's 76 minutes. There's some stuff in there that is going to kind of give you aha moments if you already know, but you got to be paying attention. I don't really point it out, especially there's some stuff in there with some of the Hubbard stuff with him talking and this guy, the guy who's a free zoner, he's like the head of the free zone. And he talks about, just, I don't want to give it away. Watch this guy though. He like created like another, I guess, OT level 9 or something. He created his own level beyond what is already there. And he literally says, it's pretty fitting, considering the title of this series is The Spellcasters, because that, that's really the whole gist of it. MK, especially with Volume 1, MK Ultra, military psychological operations, Hollywood, the truth movement. All this stuff. It's all one interconnected thing, and it very much has to do, especially with Scientology and MK Ultra being born at the same time, out of the ashes of the OSS and then the CIA, with L. Ron right in there, as the formation of that was happening. You see this whole wide scoping sinister agenda that, of course, is way more sick and sinister than these phony controlled talking heads have been screaming about all these years, like Jones and others. But this OT level, this guy that created is the head of the free zone. There's a clip in there in 1.5 where, he basically says, yeah, well, what do you do when you get to these upper levels? And he's saying that actually you could actually take this beyond how he's taken it. And he says in his own words that you eventually gain powers like a sorcerer. Straight up. So again, more confirmation there, what we already knew. And that was the whole, it was a whole basis for the MK Ultra stuff. And originally, the Nazis had already had a leg up on us. And with Himmler and the Nazis doing all those Black Sun rituals at Wewelsburg Castle and in Germany, and then attempting to use what they wanted to do. They were the first ones that wanted to try to create a what would eventually be, kind of be known as a Manchurian candidate. That's pretty much what it's colloquially known as today. It's sort of the slang term for it because of that movie, or multiple movies now. But that was their original goal, was to use these black magic techniques of soul cracking that L. Ron Hubbard Jr. described, just like I talked about many, many years ago with the levels of Freemasonry and how each successive degree is designed to slowly open up your soul for control. So eventually, when you get to the highest levels, even though you may not appear it to anybody else, and it may just, looking at a person or talking to them, it may not appear that they're any different than they've ever been, they are fully controlled by these entities. It's the opposite of what Scientology talks about. Scientology says that they're going to make you go clear, and that you have all these. It's the reverse of what they say. They say that you have all these dead alien souls trapped in you, and that causes the misery. And then eventually, I've not ever found, there's not one single person that's ever gone through all the OT levels and came out on the other end and said, "Oh my God, this changed my life. I am a better person." None of them have. No. Instead, what happens? They become even stranger, even weirder. I mean, there's mainstream news reports of Tom Cruise after he went to OT level 8, which is, of course, the highest in standard, accepted Scientology, whatever. But yeah, they even say there's been reports in the news that says Tom Cruise has those crazy kind of powers, that he can levitate and read minds and all this shit. But that's what it is. I mean, it's the reverse of what Scientology says. Scientology will tell you that it's about that going clear is about clearing these alien souls, when it's actually the reverse. Going clear and going through these levels is about cracking your soul open that allow things to enter to control you. So when you get to the highest levels, you're fully controlled. That's the that's the whole sick irony of this, because they're convincing people that, going up the bridge, as they call it, and ascending to these different levels that cost more and more each time, are each one, adding benefit to them. And really, it's just making them a more perfect slave. That's really what it boils down to. And again, the Nazis were already, they were experimenting with LSD to try to do this. That's what the whole introduction of these various chemicals, and they didn't just use LSD and psilocybin and stuff like that, but they used everything. I mean, if you go and read some of these, like, Project Artichoke documents and stuff, I mean, they used stuff I've never even heard of. I mean, weird. But that was the whole thing. That's why, when anybody who's ever done LSD or psilocybin or any of that stuff, that one of the reasons why people do it, other than, the idiots who just want to do it to get fucked up or whatever, one of the reasons why people do it is for that spiritual experience, because it gives you access to other dimensions and realms, within the scope of just a living human experience, on a small scale. So this was the whole impetus behind the usage and the interest of psychedelics in the creation of mind control slaves. This was the whole thing, because it very much has to do with the spiritual elements. That's what it's all about. It's about creating these people that appear to be human, but really aren't. And that's what these successive levels of the OT levels of Scientology does. And as I talk about in the Spellcasters Volume 1, the story that I related with Alex Jones, that's still seriously, I've seen some shit in my time, man, but I tell you what, that was, it still haunts me. Like, I can think about it right now. I can remember Look, man, I mean, we've all seen Jones making those faces and doing crazy shit, but I'm telling you, guys, even the craziest fucking shit you've seen him do on like video or whatever does not equal what I witnessed and what I saw. It was the closest thing I can imagine to a literal demon. And again, this happened back in 2006. This happened back. I was a fan of him at the time. I hadn't started my radio show yet. I hadn't found out any of the stuff. Had no reason to question the validity of any of that stuff yet. And but everything everything happens for a reason, and that's one of the things with my life and my journey is, whether you want to call it God or the universe or whatever, some force has always seemed to put me exactly where I need to be at that time. Even though I may not see it at the time, it always something always puts me where I need to be. And I remember leaving, going home that night. I can remember everything about it. Everything about the whole night. And he was fucked up too. Jones was fucked up later. At that point, it was kind of early in the night. I think it was before he did a speech and they showed the movie or whatever. But like I said, man, I mean, at that point, I had, I was just a fan. It was just so weird to be standing there, minding my own business, and look over and just see this, guy, and I like look away, look back, and he's over there, and he's still fucking gritting his teeth. And I mean, it was just, it shook me. I remember all the way driving home that night, it was on my mind, and I was thinking about it, and just thinking about how bizarre it was. And I just remember thinking, well, maybe one day I'll figure it out or whatever. But again, once you start looking into, what happens when you go through those upper level OT levels, I mean, think about that. He would have had to have been at least OT level 3 by the time he started, because that's where prison planet. I mean, the term prison planet was coined by L. Ron Hubbard. It first appears in OT level 3 in Scientology. That's where it appears. So, and you can look high or low for any other sources on this, because I did the research for a very, very, very long time, and it's conclusive. That's where that term came from, and also the term InfoWars came from the Michael Aquino Mind War documents. And this is why I had all those people when I started talking about the free zone stuff, like I talk about in Spokecasters 1.5. Everybody was, I got all these emails and stuff, and people asking me about Freeman and the whole free zone thing. And look, again, it's just funny. All I did was respond. I didn't follow up with this after this happened, but it's just funny because I answered the question. A lot of people were asking me about it, and I answered it honestly. And then, of course, I got nothing. I got a bunch of hateful comments. Oh, so you're not cool with Freeman now? Oh, shaking my head or whatever, this, that, and the other. It's like, it just doesn't pay sometimes. I mean, it just doesn't matter. There's just a lot of people out there who don't want the truth. And, I didn't make any accusations against Freeman or anything, or tell people not to trust him. But the thing about it is, people can figure that stuff out on their own. You don't really always necessarily need me to tell you whether or not you should trust or support somebody or not. You know what I mean? The information at this point, especially the way that we've been presenting it here with the Spellcaster series, speaks for itself. So, it's regardless of what I think about somebody or what I don't think about somebody, ultimately, everybody out there has their own mind and has their own ability to decide for themselves on these things. Do I think it's fucking strange, weird, and coincidental? Yeah, but I don't believe in coincidences. So, yeah, I mean, it bothers me. I think it's just too coincidental, man. And when I look back, I was going through some old emails, and I found the first ever original email like I sent Freeman in 2006, and I completely forgot that was that he came. See, he was there that night too. Freeman was at that event too with Alex Jones. It's quite interesting. In fact, there were quite a lot of people. There was Jack Blood, other radio host that used to be on air, or I guess maybe still is, was there. Jim Mars. And then a guy who a year later, who I didn't even know at the time, a year later would end up be giving me my first radio show, was there at this thing too. But Yeah, I mean that whole thing. It just seems very strange at how long the whole free zone thing has been covered up. And I discovered it back in October, and I talked about it on the show, and it didn't get much. Didn't make many waves, and then I talked about it again recently. And within just weeks after talking about it again, they have that Reza Aslan Believer show, and with whole segments in there, and you'll see that in 1.5. All of a sudden, here's a mainstream news show. All of a sudden, they're talking about the free zone. There was not free zone. Actually, there is something. There is something else I found. I guess I'm just gonna have to make a separate video for it. I wish I would have remembered it because I forgot to put it in volume 1, and then I forgot to put it in volume 1.5, and it won't really fit in 2. But if you watched Spellcasters 1, there's a segment in there on Jon Ronson. Jon Ronson is the guy who allegedly, we'll say allegedly because it was, of course, it was fucking totally staged, but who snuck into the Bohemian Grove with Alex Jones. And I think there's a clip in there in Secret Right Volume 2. I think that's the film is in there. Maybe Volume 1, but I can't remember. It's one of the Secret Rights. I think it's Volume 2. Where there's a clip from where right before they're inside like a hotel room. They're just about to sneak into the Grove, and Alex's wife, ex-wife now, the one that he's in court with as we speak, makes a statement saying that, he's an actor. He's a good actor. I can't believe nobody brought that clip up and has presented it in the court yet. But, there she was even then saying, that was like 2001 or something. So, I mean, there she was even then saying this guy is an actor. He's a good actor. But back to Jon Ronson, there's a little segment in there, Spellcasters 1 on him. So Jones supposedly snuck into the Grove with him. And he wrote this book called Them, detailing stuff like, trying to get into Bilderberg conferences with Jim Tucker. But he also wrote The Men Who Stare at Goats. And, of course, that ties in with Stubblebine and the all of the psychological warfare stuff. But the one thing that I forgot to put in the film, because I was connecting, showing the connections with Alex Jones, Jon Ronson, psychological warfare stuff, all of this, connections with him. And back in the 90s, this is even before, I think you can find this on YouTube. I'm not for sure, but even back before Jones and Jon Ronson snuck into Bohemian Grove, there was a show, I believe it was a BBC broadcast. But there's a show where this is the earliest, I remember. I can't believe okay. This is actually the right story here. I got to remember. Okay, this is why I didn't put it in Volume 1. Now I remember. I found this clip on Jon Ronson talking about Scientology. It's from the 90s, from the BBC. I found this clip, right? But I didn't really watch all the way through it. And I went back and watched all the way through it. And in that clip, he talks about free zoners, and he has free zoners on the show with him. To me, that's just a huge smoking gun. I may make a little, I think I'll just make like a little separate YouTube video thing for that, just as bonus content. There's one other thing too that I probably will make. Not major things or anything that I left out, but stuff like that. I mean, to me, that's a huge revelation. Here's here's Jon Ronson. The guy writes the book that the movie Men Who Stare at Goats are on. It's all about, the Project Stargate and all that stuff that ties in with Scientology and MK Ultra and the PSYOP stuff and Alex Jones. And then, of course, here he is doing a show, and he really is defending Scientology quite a bit in this documentary. So again, all these things, we have all this evidence, and still yet we have people who either just want to try to ignore this information or, try to convince themselves that it's not true. Well, that's only going to last for so long, People tried to do this same thing. People, it's funny. It's like I'm living in deja vu land, because this is the exact same thing that happened to me back when I was doing the Secret Right series of films. I was talking about this stuff constantly. I was making films about putting it out, and nobody wanted to accept it or admit it. Now it's common, just accepted knowledge. Now they talk about the CMP regularly in the media, and they did not used to do that. That's what they have to do once these operations get exposed, ladies and gentlemen. Once we're able to bring light on these subjects that even the so-called conspiracy truthers are not talking about. Once we shed light on that, well, it's open, and they have to put it out there. But it's funny because it's kind of the same thing now. There are people that are trying to ignore this information, but it's funny how they, not really able to ignore it much anymore because it continues to come out. But yeah, so the Jones trial, of course, continues, and this is like I said on the last show, this is really, really a fascinating thing to watch, and it's fascinating to see Jones using tactics well above his pay grade. And by well above his pay grade, I mean he's using tactics now that are beyond his personal level of intelligence to come up with on his own. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously, especially if you're following this and watching what he's doing, dude, it's fantastic. I mean, it is slick. Every move of this trial has been orchestrated. All this stuff is orchestrated. This is absolutely orchestrated. It wouldn't even be getting all the attention in the media that it is if it wasn't orchestrated. I talked about this many, many years ago. And of course, he's orchestrating this. We already had the stuff that, happened last week with everything that came out about him being a performance artist and all the rest. Then he goes right back on his show and denies that he's a performance artist. I'm real. I'm this and the other. And yet he's not supposed to even be talking about the case at all because of a gag order. Yet he continues to talk about stuff that then gets brought up in the courtroom. You see what's going on here? What he's doing is, it's not up for argument, folks. If you're still somebody out there that's thinking that this is not, I mean, his lawyers put in this defense. When you see him say, when you see them in the courtroom say that he's a performance artist and he can't be judged on things that, his persona that relates to InfoWars or whatever, and then you see him get on his video and still talking about the case, that's the character. That's what people aren't getting. You're not seeing the character in the courtroom. You're seeing the real Jones. When you see him, even if it's a cell phone video he's making on going to court, that's when he's in the character. Because the character is now telling people that, it's George Soros came up with that. He literally said that in the video, that George Soros came up with everything. It is comical. It's so comical at this point. He's the ultimate troll, dude. It's everything he says. It's just strictly trolling people. And, he's tried to say, well, that's two separate people, this, that, and the other. But yet, okay, just to break it down for you, plain and simple, what he's doing is, it's very smart, it's very genius, but he didn't come up with this on his own. What he's doing is, because it's working, he's been trying to get a mistrial. The judge has already denied a mistrial 3 times. The second one was on Friday. I think they tried to get another one today. Judge denied it. But what he's doing is he's then going on his show after he gets out of trial. He gets on the show, but then he's back in that persona that's already been established. So he goes on the show and says the most recent crazy shit that he said, and we'll get into that in a minute. And then the lawyer, not the lawyer, but the judge says, well, we don't want to make this about, we don't want InfoWars to be on trial here and this, that, and the other. And then they bring up these statements that he makes, and then he calls for a mistrial because then he raises his hand saying, "Oh, well, how could they bring in that stuff I talked about on my show?" See what he's trying to do? He's saying all this crazy shit so that then when they bring it up, he then can say, "Oh, you're making it about my work and blah 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 blah." It's genius. He's absolutely manipulating and controlling the entire trial. There's been reports. I saw something. There's so many stories, man. I've found so many little things. I've been peering through all these articles, there's information, even though a lot of them have the same info, a lot of them don't. There was one piece that had his ex-wife saying that that he bought the whole courthouse. Like he's bought and paid off everybody from the, which doesn't surprise me in the least bit. I mean, he's been throwing around money and spending big dollars to control situations for a long time. And I can speak from personal experience from this. It happened to me personally. And I'll tell you about that in a minute. But there was some statement that was made that was something about the kids. I don't know who said this to the kids, or one of the kids said the statement of, this is happening because of Donald Trump, and another statement, Kelly Jones said something about, her exact words were, big money interests. Big money interests are controlling this trial. So it's fascinating to see this happen. And on Sunday, or Saturday, I guess, Jones puts out this video entitled Live, Alex Jones Responds to Sandy Hook Vampire. That is the Sandy Hook Vampire. That doesn't make any sense. And then promises new Sandy Hook, Newtown information released. But there was none of that in there. None at all. You see what I mean? This is trolling, dude. Only, I'm legitimate. I'm the real deal. I'm the most legitimate thing you'll ever find. Yet you make a video that says new Sandy Hook information in it, and there's none in it at all. Those of you who've been listening to me for a long time, you'll notice this. I've never commented on this, but I'll bring it up now. Did you notice how I never fucking jumped all over that? Did you notice how I never did show after show and talked about the whole Sandy Hook thing? See, that's another one of those examples, folks. Certain things like that, when you don't hear me talking about it, and it's becoming the big, they tried to get me with that one. They tried to get people, and I'm talking about people out there who's sending me emails, saying, oh, you need to cover this. This needs to be a priority for you. People are trying to do that to me with Pizzagate. And I can, I got that discernment, man. I got that fucking six. It's a sin. It's like a bloodhound. I can smell the disinfo coming around the corner. No. Well, that said, that's not to say that I don't believe that, there's definitely something up with the Sandy Hook thing for sure. But that was the whole thing. My point I made at the time on the shows that what little I did talk about it when it happened was that how many of these stage shooting events did we have under Obama? I mean, I can't remember them all. There were so many that were happening at such a fast rate that by the time you start analyzing one and breaking down what happened and showing how phony it is, 10 more happened. But again, that's the whole point of this. It's not as much about whether or not what Alex Jones says is true or not, because of course he does say a lot of true things. But he also says a lot of untrue things, and he spins things in a different direction and leaves things out. But it's the mere fact that what it seems, just based on, look at how things have played out and all the events since Jones has been on there, all the stuff that he's attached to. And then, it just seems at every turn that, whenever they have something they seriously want covered up, that becomes one of the issues Jones latches onto. It leads into a perplexing video he recorded over the weekend, all the more perplexing because it comes at the midpoint of his 2-week child custody trial at the Travis County Courthouse, which resumes today. The video is entitled Live, Alex Jones Responds to Sandy Hook Vampire, and it promises new Sandy Hook, Newtown information released. It seems an odd choice of topic. Jones's assertion that the mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School was or may have even been a hoax, probably the most off-putting conspiracy theory he has put forward in a career of conspiracy theorizing. And another thing, Jones didn't come up with that. That's again, they associate, just like they associate 9/11 truth and 9/11 conspiracy with Jones. Jones didn't bring that up, but again, they associate these things with their controlled puppets, so that when they get ready to tear the whole thing down, they have somebody a batshit crazy fucking front man they can associate it all with. That's what it's all about. Of course they use crisis actors. Of course they stage shootings and stage events. Of course there were people who have been exposed as literal actors that were actual actors on. Yeah, absolutely. But when they control not only control the elements to make one of these events like a Sandy Hook or 9/11 or something happen, and then they also control the media mechanisms. It's just, it's funny that you can have all these people, because, I mean, there's thousands of them, man. People were exposing. Jones actually jumped on the Sandy Hook thing late. There were people who were making videos and exposing that shit right as it happened, before he ever even started talking about any of this stuff. He really came later and started talking more about it. And I think that again, that's an example of how I think they started seeing that it was getting out of control. They started, I mean, you had pictures of these crisis actors, man, and, you know, articles, ads taken out on Craigslist for people to, you know, looking for crisis actors right on in the area, describing exactly, you know, a shooting at a school and all. I mean, but of course, this is how they keep the things in check that they don't want to go out there and, of course, associate with him. And then thereby, when any sort of rational person or somebody that actually has honest to goodness evidence to present, it will not get looked at because it's already been associated with Alex Jones and whatever else. I mean, this is that's really what this thing is more than anything, is that they create this public perception, and the perception of the public is, and that's another one of Jones's things, is that if you're an individual who thinks that you were lied to about 9/11 and that we didn't get the whole story and other things happened than what we've been told, or Sandy Hook or anything else, or the moon landings or JFK or anything else, you all automatically are put into a box and into a corner and associated with people, whether or not you like it or want to or not. That's one of the most difficult things about what I do. The most difficult thing is to try and make people understand. I have to explain this to somebody because every time I, meet somebody and they ask me what I do, and I tell them, immediately when I tell them, every fucking time I get the eye roll and I get the, Alex Jones thing. No, actually not. No, I actually expose him. Let me explain it to you. Let me show you some evidence. And then, of course, they're like, oh, but I mean, that's exactly why they create people like Jones. That's exactly why they allow them to build them up, associate them with all these things, and all these things that are true that they're trying to keep covered up, and then have a very public collapse, thereby associating any of those topics with this mad, crazy man who, rips his shirt off and whatever else. It's genius. But the weekend video was way odder and more perplexing than that. It promised new information about Sandy Hook, but never provided any. Nothing. See, again, that's just, come on, dude. If you idiots out there who still think Jones is legitimate, if that doesn't convince you, you're fucking more brain dead than he is. And you deserve him. This is such a trolling, dude. He talks all day long. I'm the real deal. I'm the real deal. We're the most legitimate thing there is. Blah, 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 blah. And then you make a fucking video that says new information, and then there's nothing in there about it. And that's not fake news. That's as fake as fake news gets. And yet now Trump and Jones and anything that goes against them, well, that's just liberal fake media news. Again, it's the same thing they're doing with that. It's like the flip side. On the one hand, they're trying to create this idea where anything that can be seen as conspiratorial is automatically associated with Alex Jones and therefore has to be crap. And on the other side, anything that goes against them and anything, the evidence that comes out, they just wash it away as George Soros and liberal media. And of course, it works because Soros and the liberal media actually are involved in provable bad things. So then you just, because there's provable bad things they've been associated with, hell, you just blame them for anything. A flat tire, and then everybody believes it. Jones, literally every single thing. It's literally every single thing is now George Soros. He's getting sued by this yogurt company because he claimed they were, rapists or something. He's getting sued by the yogurt company, and he literally says that now this is the yogurt suit that he's being sued with is being funded by George Soros, even though George Soros has nothing to do with this fucking yogurt company. But again, what's it matter? It's going to be interesting to see if he tries to use that performance artist defense in the suit against the yogurt company. But of course, he'll probably just buy everybody off again and get the document sealed like he did in his divorce case. He promised new information about Sandy Hook, but never provided nothing. Instead, it's a discursive hour and 6-minute report beginning with scenes from the science fiction movie Soylent Green, in which Jones talks about starting in what seemed to be previously undisclosed elements of his biography. Most provocatively, there is this. When I was 16, I didn't want to play games anymore. I didn't want to play games. I didn't want to party anymore. I grew up, I'd been in the fights, all the big rituals. I'd already had probably, I hate to brag, but I'm not bragging, it's actually shameful, but I probably 150 women or more. That's conservative, folks. I'd already had over 150 women. I'd already been in fights with full-grown men. I was dating college girls by the time I was 15 years old. I was already a man at 16. When he was 16, Alex Jones, who was born in Dallas in 1974, would have still been living in Rockwall outside Dallas. He moved to Austin in 1991. He turned 17 in February of that year. For a young lad growing up in Rockwall, to have had sex with 150 women conservatively by the time he was 16 seems extraordinary. Yeah, it's an absolute lie. I mean, I grew up around that same area, man. Not in Rockwall, but surrounding towns and right around. And Rockwall was a tiny, tiny town back then. And it was a very, goody good. I'm telling you, that motherfucker wasn't. Come on. And why would he say this? Even if it was true, why would he say this while this is going on right now during the trial? There's only one reason. Again, he's saying this outlandish shit because he knows they're going to drag him into the courtroom, even though it has nothing to do with the custody case. And then they do, and then he says, well, you're putting InfoWars on trial, so I want a mistrial. He's done that 3 times now. The judge hasn't bit yet. But you could see what he's trying to do. And the fact that any other case, he would have already been cited for contempt for breaking the gag order. But again, that reinforces because he hasn't been cited for violating the gag order and not talking about the custody case, which even though he has on air, shows you again the proof of him just being a performance artist. Because if he wasn't a performance artist and that wasn't already established in the court and accepted as the defense by the judge presiding over this case, then he would have already been held for breaking the gag order that both he and his ex-wife have been put on them until after the trial's over. So that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to manipulate the case, and he's using the fact that he's already established that he's a performance artist to do it. It's great classic manipulation. And it's funny because Jones was asked last week if he was having sex with other women after his fiance moved in with him, and he said, I don't know, I'd have to see a calendar. Yet he remembers, he had sex with 150 women in 1991 or whatever it may be. And then he also says, the other strange thing he says that By 24, I had a son. Jones turned 24 in 1998. That would make that son 18 or 19 now, but the son who he is seeking to retain custody of in court is 14. You see what I'm saying? I mean, this is just flat fucking nonsense. And then he starts drawing these stick figures. I mean, it's just bizarre. Nothing, and there's, again, nothing in there about Sandy Hook, nothing at all. I got an email. I went and dug this up. I got this email back in 2012. Yeah, for those of you who didn't know it, Jones, yeah. People say that, I get that all the time. People are like, oh, you kind of sound like Alex Jones a little bit. Well, I mean, we're both from the same fucking part of the world, dude. We're both fucking Texans. But I tell you what, that dude, don't let Alex Jones turn you off of Texans. He's literally, there's nobody else. Nobody in Texas acts like him. In fact, I didn't even know everybody in Austin hates him now, which is great news. I didn't know that because for a long time, actually, he had people in Austin, people actually liked him. The whole city actually hates him now. I'm thankful for that. I'm glad that, I mean, at least I could walk around Dallas and say, nobody knows who the fuck I am. It's great. But man, I mean, everybody there fucking hates him. I got to tell you, I mean, I've lived in Texas my whole life. I've met a lot of fucking insane people. I've met a lot of fucking crazy people, but I don't know. I'm still leaning more towards, I don't think we can believe much of anything about his. I mean, you heard that thing. Oh, I had a son by the time I was 24, yet that doesn't match up with his son's age. You see what I'm saying? And then people saying, well, he sure does look older than, the age he is. I mean, there's no telling. The one thing I don't believe that if you're one of those idiots that believes that he's Bill Hicks, I would love for you to just go and hang yourself right now. Thank you. Every one of you. I'm not kidding. If you believe Alex Jones is Bill Hicks, fucking go kill yourself. Go kill yourself. Or do like I did and actually go. I've actually been to his gravesite. It's in Mississippi. It's out in the middle of nowhere. Me and my buddy went by there when we were going through Mississippi to shoot stuff for Lost Secrets back in 2012. And of course, there was a guy working there at the graveyard and stuff that I talked to and asked him if he knew where Bill Hicks' grave was, and he showed me and everything. And he was there the day of the funeral. He saw the body. He saw go into the ground. He dug the hole himself. Anyway, that's another one of those fucking just those things that are made to muddy the water, so that anytime anybody comes up with anything that exposes Jones, you'll have a section of the people that'll go, oh, what about him being Bill Hicks? And then you have to explain, no, I don't believe that. Yes, I believe these things about him, but just because you believe one section of things about Jones that are provable doesn't mean you automatically take the leap into that. I mean, it's just the biggest bunch of idiocy I've ever fucking seen. But with that said, the evidence that he is, and it probably has been for quite a long time, a manufactured persona that's there in spades. So back in 2012, I got this email, and I dug through my email and found it. And this is, I'll just read it for you. She says, her name was Christy. And she said, Alex is from Rockwall, as I'm sure you know. He's a toolbox. He used to run down the halls in high school and ram his head into the lockers. He was also an atheist. Not a Christian like he says he always has been, and would act like he turned into the devil. Everything he says is bullshit. We were good friends. We went on one date. He was just crazy. Period. He would run down the hall shouting and screaming. We were all shocked to see him on the Jesse Ventura show. Couldn't believe that he'd made anything of himself. I never knew he was on roids. I just thought he was crazy. He would act like he was the devil. Now he does shows about how our government is the devil. So I found that very interesting that he was just, a nut. Running down the hall shouting, screaming, slamming his head into lockers and shit. I mean, what a... See what I'm saying? He's always been like that. And looking more and more into his dad, man, and reading some of this stuff that's come out in some of these articles, his dad seems to be, because he's always put up the front that, oh, he's just a dentist. Now, his dad seems to be the one that's one of the behind the scenes puppet masters. He's probably one of the guys that's got main connections into the intelligence community. Where did I see that at? Oh, it says Alex Jones' parents are also involved with InfoWars to the tune of millions of dollars in the last couple of years, according to her testimony. It's a family business, but they don't say how or what. Yeah, I'm telling you, folks, you aren't getting millions and millions and millions upon millions of dollars selling fucking Jew gold and dick pills and all the rest of that stuff. These people have got themselves a nice little racket going on. And like I said, if you think Jones won't splash money around and buy off people and the rest of it, boy, you got another thing coming. And when you've got that kind of money, that's obviously you're getting that money from people who are pushing the agenda. I used to be on this. It's a big FCC license, FM 50,000 watt flamethrower fucking radio station in Central Texas. It's between between Dallas and Austin, where Jones is from. And on this channel, they for like 50 or 60 years, every day they have like this for an hour they have a polka radio show. It's a huge thing in that part of the world. If you ever go down to Austin from Dallas, there's a little place called the Czech Stop. They have Czechoslovakia and stuff. That's around that area. And for many years, I don't even know if the station's still around now or if Jones is still on it or whatever. But for many years, what they would do is they would play Jones's show from like 11 to 1. And then an hour of the polka music, and then they'd play like, the last 2 hours, last hour, whatever. I can't remember what it was. This is basically when he was doing 4 hours, and they'd do like, because right around the time he switched to doing 4 hours, because I switched my show. When I first started doing my show, this was back even when I still liked Alex Jones. I don't know what possessed me to make this statement, but I said, give me a year. Give me a year, I'll be going up against Alex Jones in his own time slot. 9 months later, I did exactly that. 9 months, not even a year. And so I started doing my show the same time as his every day, going directly head to head with him. And I'm so glad I did that for the period of time I did it, but I'd never do it again. This kind of stuff does not need to be. I'm not a morning person. I was having to get up butt crack of dawn and prep the show for, it's just, no, fuck all that shit. I'm glad I did it for the period of time I did it, but no way would I ever want to do a show like this and talk about this at 11 o'clock in the morning. Nah, nothing good happens before noon. Everybody knows that. But the point of the matter is, I went head to head with him within 9 months. And the owner of this station where they play the polka down there in Central Texas just got sick of Jones and his annex and all this stuff. So they wanted to go another direction. They started carrying my show and put my show on at that time of day on this big 50,000 watt flamethrower. And I had it for about 6 months. And boy, I hammered it. I was talking about the Anunnaki. I was talking about the Council for National Policy. I was exposing Jones and John Birch study, the rest of it. It lasted about 6 months before Jones finally had to cough up $30,000 of his own cash to pay the owner of the station to remove my show and put his back on. Because it's a small station, you know, they don't get a lot of money anyway. And Jones knew that, took advantage of the situation, went down there with a briefcase full of cash and made it happen. And the owner even apologized to me, saying, you know, and I told him, I was, look, I'm not mad at you. I understand. I mean, money talks, bullshit walks. But it's just hilarious that anybody in any other situation, you know, I mean, it's funny that I just think it's great. I just think it's fantastic. I think it's fantastic that motherfucker had to shit $30,000 to fucking get me off. I mean, but anybody else, you know, if Jones was a real person who didn't have backing from the Central Intelligence Agency and you know, the government and everything else and Scientology, the dude would have been long gone a long time ago. That's the thing. But they have to have somebody there. There's too many independent operators like me and others out there, many others out there now. There's just too many of us independent operators now who have exposed this stuff wide open, and you know, they have no choice now but to have somebody like an Alex Jones. And look, if it's not an Alex Jones, it's going to be somebody else, and eventually they'll have some other shill in there. But that's what this is, and who knows, with the way he's talking, you know, it may be a generational thing. He's talking about getting his kids involved in this. But the point of the matter is that it's going to continue, whether it's Jones, and guess what? I'll be here exposing them too. I don't give a fuck who it is, because that's gonna be their thing now. They're never not going to have that ever again, at least until they play the final card. You know what that final card is, but I'll talk about that in 1.5 too. But yeah, they're always going to, from now on, they're not just going to allow there to be unmitigated truth and unmitigated, you know, stuff coming out. They've got to have these people like him who muddy the waters and create the guilt by association thing in order to keep the agenda going. And he certainly has done that. Certainly has done that. But again, Alex Jones going down or Alex Jones not being there anymore, it's not going to solve the problem. That's the thing. You know, even if he went away tomorrow, it's not going to solve the problem. It's bigger than him. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than all this stuff. These people have created this whole. I mean, just like they created and controlled the counterculture of the late 60s, they created and have controlled the truth movement going back to very shortly after the Kennedy assassination. And it blows people's minds to even have to accept the fact that, you know, as much as we want the truth, whether you want to admit it or not, me, you, and everybody else bought another line of bullshit that we thought was, you know, the truth, separating ourselves from material reality. But I mean, there's nothing you can do about it except continue to try to find the truth and continue to expose those who want to try to cover it up. And that's what I've continued to do here and what I'm going to continue to do. Got a listener email here. He says, hi, Josh. I don't know if you've heard of this Gotham Shield exercise taking place in New York, New Jersey. Yes, I have. That's simulating a nuke attack and or an EMP attack, but it's been going around the conspiracy channels lately with talk of a possible nuclear false flag. You know, again, yes, I've heard of this. But this is a great point with what I was just talking about. Every time there's any kind of a drill, false flag this and false flag that starts being touted. And of course, again, with good reason, have they in the past, yes or no, have they in the past ran real time, real live operations on top of drills and piggyback them with the real thing? Yes. Can we prove that's happened? Yes. Does it mean that every time there's a drill, it's going to be the possibility of a false flag? No. Because, again, they've played that card a lot, and they play it again too many times. They've already played it way too many times. But again, it doesn't mean every time that there's a fucking drill that this automatically means, oh, we may be. That's where the fear sauce and that's where the propaganda, that's where the Chicken Little Alex Jones stuff comes into play. Look, regardless of any of this stuff, there's always going to be contingency plans. The government's always going to run drills. Same thing when people were freaking out. Remember when people were freaking out about the FEMA coffins some years ago? I mean, I would be concerned if our government wasn't doing these things, to be honest with you. I mean, I would never defend the government for anything, for any reason, at any time. But I have to say, any government, any responsible government would make preparations for mass casualty events, whether or not there were elements of that government that were creating those events themselves. Same thing with these drills. Is it possible that there may be something that happens at peak? Yes, there's always that chance. But again, this fear mongering and this hysteria, where people hype up these things, and they're just doing it to get more views on their channel and the rest of the stuff. That's why I don't fucking jump and run and go crazy nuts, ballistic on every fucking thing that comes down the pike, folks. But when you hear me get that's why when you hear me get concerned with something, you should get concerned. Because I just flat don't do it unless I feel there's a real cause for alarm. He continues on here in the email and says, but at the same time, a big geomagnetic storm was supposed to go off on April 24th, and it was supposed to cause blackouts. But the blackouts already occurred on Friday in New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles before the storm. Yeah, well, we had some happen here on Friday. In Dallas, we had, and I didn't see any reports of the news about it. I didn't even talk about this a couple of weeks ago. You guys might have seen this. A couple of weeks ago, we had somebody hacked. I guess they're saying somebody hacked the system. I don't know. But for like 4 hours, man, every fucking civil defense, not just the tornado sirens, the air raid sirens were going off for like 5 straight hours here in Dallas, man. It was spooky. It was crazy. I almost got on the air and started broadcasting then, but there was definitely something going on there. There was all kinds of reports of UFOs coming from the west and people seeing lights in the sky. Dallas police had choppers in the air within minutes of the first thing going off, and then they just claimed, oh, it was somebody who hacked it or something. There was something that was some kind of psychological operation, because it was, all that Russian stuff was happening right around that time. But yeah, we had those blackouts here too on Friday, and I didn't see any reports about it. And to top it all off, most mainstream news media outlets reported the blackouts as being unrelated to each other, purely coincidental, the result of accidents and other horse shit. Obviously, the media is lying about the geomagnetic storm, saying it was going to happen later than it did happen. Simultaneously, there is talk of these meteor showers. One person who worked at the emergency management in New Jersey low level is said to have overheard a conversation between higher-ups discussing possible impacts of space rocks in and around New Jersey or off the coast of New York. Well, here we go. Von Braun in his final card. Remember, first the threat would be communism, then it would be third world crazy terrorists, then it would be asteroids, space rocks, then the final card would be the staged alien invasion. All of it would be a lie in order to get humans to band together and create a space-based weaponry system to fight off the asteroids first, then to fight off the aliens. But then those weapons would then be turned back around on Earth, down in citizens, and anybody that tried to break free of the newly formed global government would just be vaporized. Watch that second, I think it's the second Captain America film, I think is which one. One of those in there, they have that scenario play out in one of those movies. Where they get the space-based weapon system, then they turn it back around down on Earth. He also goes on to say here in this email, well, some YouTube makers who seem particularly smart on the subject are figuring out this nuclear drill, nuclear false flag stuff may be, in fact, a cover or distraction from the real issue, which seems to be asteroid or sun activity. We know that there is a great big hole in the sun that's been spewing coronal mass ejections out. It did so back in March. There were northern lights seen as far south as Maine. This type of weather on the sun may be a solar storm system that takes a long time to go away, which means could happen again and again. But what about these meteor showers? Well, I've talked about this many times. Years and years ago, I talked about this. In fact, if you go and watch my Reality of Illusion series, I did in light of this email, go back and watch that. There's some information that came out in 2012. There's some stuff in there that ties into this. And I talked about that even back then, the idea of them blaming a solar event that has an EMP type effect and knocks out power grids, using that to blame on North Korea or Iran as a pretext for nuclear war. And that very well could still be happening. But there's definitely a lot of ramp up to this. And as I've talked about with the ramp up to the staged alien invasion, again, that's the one thing we haven't seen is the threat from asteroids yet, as Werner von Braun predicted, and this very well could be it. I find it also interesting that as this is going on, we would get this story that's now come out about Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. Ancient carvings from 11,000 BC show swarm of deadly comets hitting the earth. Ancient symbols carved into the site at Turkey suggest a swarm of comets smashed into Earth 13,000 years ago, triggering an ice age. That's the Great Flood event. That's the event that caused the Rockwall to be covered up. That's exactly what the soil analysis at Rockwall showed, is that the soil analysis showed that the Rockwall was covered by this soil in a catastrophic event somewhere in the neighborhood of 13,000 years ago. Scientists believe that the site may have been an ancient observatory, and a carving of a headless man is thought to symbolize human disaster and extensive loss of life. Now, they've known about this for years, and I started talking about this in my back when I started my Lost Secrets of Ancient America series in 2012. I even mentioned it in that Reality of Illusion thing, the Secrets of the Sun that I've just mentioned. I talk about it in there and show some stuff from the mounds, because I started even finding that then, that a lot of these ancient sites are pointing and alerting us to the cyclical events. And I've talked about this before, about how the elite keep the knowledge of these cyclical events from us, and that these ancients were trying to point us in that direction. Now, they've been trying to keep this covered up and keep a lid on this for years. Now, all of a sudden, with this we talked about with this email from the listener, now all of a sudden, right now, they decide to allow this to come out. They've been keeping this a secret for many, many years, folks. Because these cyclical events happen. Of course, they want to try and manipulate that and use that to their own end. Because, again, they want to, what they're going to do, I mean, you know what they're going to do. They have every contingency plan where they're going to be able to ride this stuff underground, ride it out. They're going to leave all of us to die up here on the surface, and they're going to set up shop again. And, Alex Jones talks about depopulation, eugenics all day long, but he never talks about that. And then this comes out today. Have aliens lived on Earth before? Ancient technological species may have existed on our planet billions of years before humans, claim scientists. So all of a sudden, all the stuff I've been talking about for years is now being brought out, and they're just now conveniently rolling it out. Whereas 3 or 4 years ago, when I started work on my Lost Secrets of Ancient America series, you were crazy to talk about this stuff. You know, people laughed at me when I told them the dating on the Rockwall shows that the motherfucker is 432,000 years old. And the technology is beyond anything we have the ability to do now. I mean, if I take a bunch of those, you know, minerals and crush them up to make stone, they're just going to fucking, you're not going to get results like you have in the Rockwall stones. It's just going to all, you know, turn into one big soup. What happens when you make a soup? You take a bunch of ingredients, right? What happens? When you make a soup, it just all turns into one big thing, right? There's no, you'd have to separate it out and go through the trouble to get, you know, to break it back down to its constituent parts that made it up in the first place. Because it all just meshes together. That's the same thing with the materials that the Rockwall stones are made out of. You know, it's this amalgamation of these very, very specific minerals, specifically ones like niobium that don't even occur naturally in rock. They have to, niobium has to be extracted from columbite, period. Yet, niobium exists in the rock wall, but yet columbite doesn't. That's because it can't. It has to be extracted through a chemical process from columbite. It's in the wall, but yet all these materials from tourmaline and starlite and brookite, titanite, all these rare elements that make up the minerals of the rock wall were all not only stripped independently from their stones and then mixed together to cast these stones, but when you look at it under a microscope, the molecular structure of each individual mineral remains intact, in situ in the stone. Where if you and I try to do that, they would all just blend and mix together. Somehow, by some process unknown to humans, they were able to create these brick stones where all the individual minerals, molecular structures remain independent and don't bond together. There is no molecular bonding that goes on with these materials, which enables it to essentially be indestructible and withstand anything. And of course, we know that part of the structure of the rock wall was a seawall. Because you dig down deep enough, you find sand dollars that aren't even petrified, still have fresh meat in them. You find shark's teeth embedded to the outside of the wall. But because you're talking about a civilization whose acknowledgement would throw a whole wrench into everything, not only religion, but science and everything else, this is why it's continued to be covered up. It's been one of the biggest unanswered questions for decades. Is there or was there ever life elsewhere in the solar system? Now a U.S. space scientist believes he may have the answer. Professor Jason Wright claims that technological aliens may have once lived on one of the planets in our solar system before disappearing without a trace. Professor Wright is an associate professor in astronomy and astrophysics at Penn State University. In a new paper titled Prior Indigenous Technological Species, Professor Wright suggests that ancient aliens could have lived on either Mars, Venus, or even Earth. And Professor Wright claims that there's a chance we could soon discover techno signatures left behind by the. Well, I think we have. We have discovered those things. I mean, one only needs to look at the rock wall itself. I mean, that's the rock wall is more interesting than the Great Pyramids at Giza or the ziggurats at Ur. I mean, we're talking about a true Atlantean colony. This thing, it was described in the Sumerian king list. It talks about how for like 200,000 years before the Great Flood, they built these great cities around the earth. And one of the descriptions talks about how 432,000 years, and again, that matches the dating identically with the rock wall. This thing, I mean, you're talking about something that is designed to produce large amounts of energy whenever sound waves are applied to it. I saw, I forget where I read this recently, but apparently he never made this indication any of the times I talked to him. But John Lindsay, who was one of the original researchers on the Rockwall, who did his own dig back in the late 90s, I've started to look at this Rockwall stuff in kind of a different way since I've been looking at the Scientology stuff. And one of the things that John Lindsay believes that, I don't believe, but this is what he believes. He believes that the rock wall was built by demons. That's what he believes. And it sounds, when I first heard that, I was like, well, that sounds wacky. But now, maybe it's not so wacky. Especially in terms of looking at this from the whole Scientology thing. And, and the Thetans, as we talked about earlier, and them being demons, and thinking about that whole Xenu story and the rest of it. John Lindsay also said that when they had the dig, he told me this when I went to his house back in 2008. He said while they were doing the dig, he said some guys showed up at his house and at the dig site. He said it was two guys. He said they were in dark black suit, dark black sunglasses, and they basically said, "You got to shut this down or else." And I pressed him. I was like, "Well, who were they? Were they men in black?" He's like, "No, they weren't men in black." I was like, "Well, were they Secret Service?" He's like, "No, they weren't Secret Service." I'm like, "FBI?" No. He was like, "No, they were like church people." I'm like, "Oh, church people." I'm like, "Oh, really?" I'm like, "Oh, so they must have been, these must have been fucking Vatican guys." And he was like, "Well, no, not necessarily." And I never got any more out of him. Anything else about it. And it always stuck with me. It's been round and around in my head for almost 10 years, that conversation, because, well, who else could it be? I racked my brain with that. I'm sitting there thinking, well, I named every usual something. Could have been Men in Black, could have been fucking FBI, could have been CIA, could have been Vatican. No, it wasn't that. And then I remembered that he had a picture in his house, John Lindsay did, a picture of him with Zachariah Sitchin. And he had some artifacts and stuff. He had this statue, this Mayan spaceman statue. I remember telling my friend, looking at that, going, "I don't think he's supposed to have that. I don't know where he got. It was legit. It was real. I don't know where the fuck he got this thing at. Never seen anything like it, not in a picture or anything else." And I asked him, "Was that real?" That company, he said, "Yeah, it's 100% real." So I don't know. He could have been involved with something, but now the more I look at it, I think these people. He said because I remember him specifically saying, I said, "Were they CIA? No. Were they FBI? No. Secret Service? No." And I remember him specifically saying they were church people. And I'm thinking, what people, fit that demeanor of church? Now I wouldn't, again, back then I wasn't even thinking about Scientology, and certainly wasn't thinking about and didn't know about, the connections with MK Ultra, PSYOPs, the CIA, now the Truth Movement, and the rest of this. Again, folks, this is why the work that I'm doing is so important, because it really has caused me to have to look at everything with a different frame of reference now that we've uncovered who's been controlling the Truth Movement, controlling these figureheads for so many years, and why it's been difficult for us to figure out, the reality of some of this stuff, because we're looking at it from the perspective of what we've been told. We're told to filter everything through the filter of Illuminati and Freemasons and whoever else, but then the CIA and the Scientology angle stuff is being left out, and we're not looking through that, and then we wonder why we still have questions. But see, when you notice how when you start to reintroduce these things, kind of like the Leo Ramini stuff, the stuff I cover in Spellcasters 1.5, once you start to look at it from this different angle, it's like everything opens up again. And that's really what the whole free zone thing and stuff has done as well with all this. But, it's only going to get more difficult, folks. It's only going to get harder. And, again, that's why it's just important that each and every one of you support our work in every way that you can to keep us going. I'm working day and night right now trying to get Spellcasters Volume 2 ready for the release in July. But again, it just gets more and more difficult, when we don't have budgets to operate with. I mean, we haven't sold very many copies. I was hoping that at least 1.5 would, hold us over until you get Spellcasters 2 done. But I mean, we just haven't had that many sales yet, and we just got to have your support. We've got to have contributions. We only had $25 come in this month so far, and we've got operating costs due in a week on Monday. So we just need everybody to band together, help us out, chip in what you can, spread the word, because there are a lot more people now talking about this kind of stuff than there was a few years ago, and certainly way more than there was when I first started. But the waters have been muddied so much, ladies and gentlemen. There's so much bullshit to wade through now, and very few people that are out there actually exposing the real stuff and exposing these people who are just nothing but, again, more paid liars for the establishment and everything else. And again, that's really how that's really what it all boils down to. But we can't, just this thing of just barely scraping by every month and not even knowing that. Again, that's part of the decision of why I'm, I don't know, I may or may not make any more films after Spellcasters Volume 2 is done. It may be it for me. I'm thinking about, it's too much money, too much resources, too much time, work, and effort that goes into these films, for us to sell 100 copies or something. You know what I mean? I can't keep doing that. If we could reach, a few thousand people per film and we get a few thousand sales from them, I mean, I'd love that. Well, it'd be great. I'd love just to sell 1,000 copies of a film, so 2,000 copies. I mean, that's nothing. That's fucking nothing, folks. Yet I can put up a video on YouTube, and again, that's going to be going away real soon too. I've been nice. I've tried to put the full free shows on there, but yet, I try to encourage people, just as long as you donate and you help us reach our goal and you help us fund our films, I can put out free shows like this on YouTube. But if the status quo continues as it's been, to where we get, again, the last show I put up on the 18th, 1,500 views. The one I put up 2 or 3 days ago, over 1,200 views. Yet, we've had 40 sales of Spellcasters 1.5. I can't keep working myself to death on these projects if the result of the work is for nothing. And that's really what it's starting to boil down to for me. That's why I just want to, I'm thinking about just once Spellcasters 2 is done, creating the box set, getting that out. And, there it is, having my work there and having that to promote and sell for a while, because it's going to be a nice collection, to have all of my stuff and all this work for the past 10 years in one collection where you can just hand that to somebody and go, here, go watch this. You think about the truth, you're into this stuff, you want to know what's really going on here, go watch this. And that's really what I want it to be, where people can have that library to go to, and it's, hopefully we'll save some people some time from themselves from having to sift through these hucksters and these fakes and the rest of it. It's anytime there's ever been real grassroots movements, the governments have tried to, at every turn, shut them down. And the only way it's ever going to happen to get some real headway in defeating these people is if other people stand up to help. So that's what we need. Please visit theglobalreality.com, and we'll have the links in this video here on YouTube as well, with all the links to the stuff. The links to the download shop where you can get all the films, and also where you can donate. You can use the donation banners we have for Spellcasters 2, and also for our fundraiser for this month. We still haven't gotten our I guess my webmaster is either given up or he's asleep at the wheel. I don't know. I'm going to have to get somebody else to do my website stuff for me. We haven't gotten up our banner on the site this month, even though I asked my webmaster to do it like 3 weeks ago. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why we haven't gotten any contributions this month other than just $25 because we haven't had the new banner up there. But you can find it at our Facebook page and you can find it in the video here as well. Okay. All right, folks. We'll see you next time. Take care.